Hey there, viewers. Some testimonies are hard to hear, not because of how they're told, but because of what they reveal. Today in court, one of Diddy's fellow inmates broke down in tears while exposing the disturbing rituals happening behind prison walls. What he described left the entire room in silence. Let's get into it. Unit 4, North. My name's Karen. People used to call me K-Lo back in Queens, back when the streets were louder than the sirens and you could still tell the time by how fast you needed to run. That was another life. I've been locked up 10 years now, out of a 17 stretch for conspiracy. Feds painted me as a kingpin, like I had an empire. Truth is, I was just trying to keep my cousin from starving, and maybe drive something that didn't stall every time it rained. I wasn't book smart back then, but prison got a way of making a man study. Books, faces, patterns. Especially patterns. You learn to read people when you're surrounded by concrete and bad decisions. It's survival, especially in SHU. They call it the Special Housing Unit, like it's some VIP thing. Ain't nothing special about it except the way it breaks you. They drop you in and strip the world down to just 4 things: light, steel, silence, and time. 23 hours locked in a box no bigger than a gas station bathroom. The 1 hour they let you out is just another box, just one with a piece of sky cut into it. Unit 4 North wasn't like the other ranges. There's a hum in the walls. I don't mean metaphorical. No, I'm talking a real sound, like something electric trapped behind the drywall, constant, like a whisper that don't want to stop. Add that to the flicker of cold lights, and you start thinking maybe the unit ain't just designed to isolate. Maybe it's designed to wear you down. At first, it was just me and a few others, all of us tucked in along the row like unwanted files. We didn't talk much. You don't ask questions in SHU. Some dudes scream into the night. Others hum old songs like their brains are trying to stitch something back together. I kept to myself, counted the rust spots on the vent, and made my peace with the slow unraveling. But then everything changed. One morning, things just shifted. Guard routines were tighter. COs stopped joking with each other. They walked in pairs now, spoke in clipped voices. Meals came earlier. Random cell checks increased. You could feel it, like the air got heavier. I didn't know what was up until word spread through the vent system. The vents carry sound better than they carry air. Someone on the far end whispered, "They move and puff in." I thought it was a joke. Puffy? Nah, not here, not in SHU. But by noon, I knew it was real. You could feel the buzz. Guards tried to act normal, but you could see it in their eyes. One of them, a big Dominican cat named Herrera, actually flinched when his radio crackled. I'd never seen that man flinch in 6 years. I waited, watched. He came in the next evening. I heard the boots first, not just the usual CO stomp. This was different, slower, measured, like a parade for a ghost. Then I saw him through the slit in my door. Diddy, Sean Combs, whatever name he was going by now, shackled at the wrists and ankles, orange jumpsuit, head lowered. Not the man I remembered from the magazines in the barber shop or the club billboards I used to see when I was 17 and stupid. He looked faded, not just tired, blurred, like a painting someone wiped too hard. His hair was grayer than the concrete, eyes sunk so deep they looked hollow. But what got me most was how still he was. Even when they unshackled him and slid him into the cell across from me, he didn't blink, didn't stretch, didn't react. Just stood there as the door clanged shut behind him. I watched for 3 days. Man didn't speak, didn't eat more than a bite or two, didn't move during rec time, just sat on his bunk with his back straight, hands on his knees, eyes locked on the wall like it was playing a movie only he could see. Day 4, I saw the first pattern. It started with the tissue. He tore them. Not in frustration, not like most of us do when we pissed or anxious. This was different, intentional, precise. Every night after chow, he'd wait for the lights to dim and then tear one square of tissue into thin strips. First lengthwise, then crosswise, then diagonally. It made no sense, but he did it like a man with purpose, like it meant something. Then came the humming. Low, barely audible, a tune I couldn't place, but it reminded me of lullabies, or maybe church music, but slower, almost mechanical, over and over again, under his breath. One night, I got bold and whispered across, "Yo, Puff, you good?" Didn't even turn. The next morning, I noticed he'd rearranged his toiletries into a perfect triangle. Soap, toothpaste, toothbrush. Always the same angle. Always pointing north. It kept building, like watching a storm roll in from far off. The guards never addressed him by name, just Inmate Combs. They handled him weird too. Softer. No roughness. No yelling. Like they were nervous about waking something up. One time, during a surprise shakedown, the CO skipped his cell, just walked past it like it didn't exist. The rest of us were flipped upside down, mattresses torn, shelves dumped. But his? Pristine. I remember thinking, either they're scared or they're told not to look too close. Then came the 4th week. That's when the scratching started. It was around 2:00 IMM. Shoe is dead quiet by then, except for the buzz in the walls. I was half asleep when I heard it. Soft, rhythmic scratching. Not frantic, not random. A pattern, like someone drawing on steel with a broken fingernail. At first I thought it was rats, but rats don't keep rhythm. Rats don't scratch 3 times, pause 2 times, repeat. It came from his cell. Over and over, like he was carving something on the wall, or summoning something from the other side. I sat up in my bunk, heart racing. I wanted to call for a CO, but what would I even say? That Sean Combs was scratching messages to ghosts in the wall? I put my ear to the vent, trying to catch more. But the scratching didn't stop. Not for the rest of the night. And the next morning, Diddy was just sitting there. Same position, same stare. But now, there was something new in his eyes. He looked right at me through the slot, just for a second, and smiled, the circle of white. After the scratching started, I stopped sleeping right. Didn't matter how tired I got. Didn't matter how many laps I walked in that tiny cell, or how long I stared at the paint blistering off the corner near my toilet. My eyes would close, and I'd still hear it, the scrape, scrape, pause, scrape pattern looping in my head like a stuck cassette. And when I did fall asleep, I'd wake up in a cold sweat with images I couldn't explain. Things I hadn't seen, places I ain't never been, always dark, always humming. I tried to stop watching him. Tried to mind my own, count my meals, stick to the clockwork of prison routine like I always had. But the thing is, when something don't make sense in a place where everything's supposed to be predictable, your brain won't let it go, not if you want to survive. And the more I tried not to look, the more my eyes found their way to the small reflections. There's a dent in my stainless steel food tray, right at the edge where the rice gets stuck. If I tilt it just right when they slide his door open for chow or meds, I can catch a sliver of his cell. Not much, but enough. That's how I saw the first circle. It was faint at first, looked like powder scattered on the floor, thought maybe he spilled his milk. But then I saw it again, and again. Same spot, same shape, perfect ring, about as wide as his shoulders. Every night. And then he sat in it. Right in the middle, cross-legged, back ramrod straight like a statue. He didn't move for hours. Just sat there, hands resting on his knees, palms up, like he was waiting for something to land in him. I didn't breathe right for the rest of the night. Next morning during pill call, I asked the CO if I could get Tylenol for a headache. Standard ask. He laughed. "We runnin' low. Combs already requested double last week. Said he needed 'em for tension." Then he walked off. Tension? That night, I caught the whole thing. He crushed the Tylenol down to powder, used the back of a state-issued spoon, just rubbing it against the concrete like a man grinding spices for something sacred. Then came the milk powder. He'd been saving it from breakfast packets. Mixed them together, pale and chalky, then pinched it into a slow, deliberate pour. A perfect circle. Then, like clockwork, he sat down in it and started whispering. I pressed my ear against the vent. It wasn't a prayer, wasn't a song either. It was names, I think, and sounds, phonetic, weird syllables that didn't belong in any language I knew. Some parts sounded like Hebrew, others like clicks. Some were just breathy shapes, but he repeated them the same way each time, over and over. Like muscle memory, like he had to. I wrote down what I could remember on the back of an old envelope I'd been saving for years. It had my grandma's handwriting on it. I didn't want to use it, but I needed paper. I had to start keeping track. One of the other inmates down the range must have seen it too, or maybe heard it, 'cause I heard a whisper one morning through the pipe system. "Yo, he ain't praying. That man's keeping something out or in." I didn't respond, just sat there holding my food tray, staring into it like a TV screen. Reflection showed him sitting cross-legged again, still as ever, his lips moving just enough to form those same strange sounds. That's when I started remembering solitary. Not here, Rikers. There was a dude in the box when I was 22. Name was Rollo. In for slicing up a rival's cousin at a dice game. Never talked. Used to draw tic-tac-toe boards on the walls over and over with his own spit. Then he'd scratch over them with fingernails until they bled. One night, he carved a full circle into his mattress with the sharp end of a comb. Sat in it, just like Diddy. Said it was to keep his thoughts in. They found him a week later chewing paper with symbols drawn on it. Didn't recognize his own name. They shipped him to a psych facility upstate. Never came back. I didn't believe in that kind of thing before. Just figured prison makes men go strange. But with Diddy, this was different. The guards were in on it too, not in a conspiratorial way, but in that don't ask questions way. Every time he asked for more tissue or milk, they gave it to him. No hesitation, no why you need double, like they asked the rest of us. They moved around his cell like it was hallowed ground. Some of them wouldn't even look him in the eye. I caught Herrera once just standing there outside the cell during med run, eyes darting back and forth while Diddy sat in the circle muttering to the wall. When I asked him later what he saw, he just said, "Man's got his own world. I ain't trying to visit." Then he walked away. By the end of that week, Diddy's rituals had expanded. He wasn't just whispering anymore. There was a rhythm now. 3 beats on the wall, pause, 2 taps on the floor, whisper, then repeat. Always the same, even when the lights were off. And the smell. I didn't notice it at first, but one night I woke up gagging. Thought the plumbing had backed up, but it was spoiled milk. Thick, sour, sticky, leaking from under his door. I don't know if he was pouring it out on purpose or if it was something else entirely. Either way, it clung to the hallway air like mold you couldn't clean. Nobody said a thing. By now, my tray had become my only TV. I'd polish it with my sleeve and angle it toward the slot like a man desperate to catch the sun. Most nights, I didn't even eat, just watched. I sketched his circle on the wall beside my bunk, not out of mockery. I just needed to see it clearly, understand the geometry. It was always perfect. No break in the line, no smudges. One night, while I was watching the tray catching just the right light from the hallway, I saw something I can't forget. Behind him, just above the bunk, there was writing. Not chalk, not ink, something darker, something that had soaked into the concrete. The symbol was round, layered, looked like a spiral made of teeth. At least, that's how I remember it. It burned itself into my vision. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see it. And just as I leaned in closer to try and get a better look, the power flickered. Not just the hallway, the whole unit. Lights dimmed, then glitched. Buzz in the wall cut out for 3 seconds. No emergency floodlights, no guard shouts, just silence. And in that silence, right before the hum came back, I swear I heard something speak. Not Diddy, not in this world. Just one word, or syllable. I can't repeat it, not right. But it echoed in my head for hours after. And when the power came back, the writing on his wall was gone. But he was still sitting in the circle, smiling, the candle that wasn't there. You ever hear silence so deep it sounds like pressure? That's what happened the night the lights went out. Not the flicker kind, not the usual hum glitch repeat that happens once or twice a month in SHU when they reboot the system. No, this was different. This was full-blown blackout, not just darkness, but something emptier than darkness. I remember it exactly. It was 2:14, i.e. midnight. I was half awake, jaw clenched from grinding my teeth in sleep. I'd been dreaming again, same as the last 3 nights, that slow chant, that voice underwater, same words I couldn't place, but could feel in my ribs when I woke up. And in that moment, while staring at the tiny red light on the sprinkler sensor above my bed, it just blinked out. So did everything else. Lights dead, ventilation cut, buzz in the wall, gone. Even the sound of the CO's boots echoing down the corridor vanished. No buzz, no click, no hum. Just silence. Real, raw, suffocating silence. At first, I thought maybe it was just my block. Maybe someone fried the panel again, or we tripped a breaker with all that machinery humming in the guts of the building. But I waited. 30 seconds, a minute, 2. No movement, no orders from the desk, no flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. Then something worse than silence. Music, soft, childlike, almost sweet. A lullaby. I couldn't place it at first. Just the tune. One of them simple ones, like the kind mamas hum when they rock babies to sleep, but slowed down. Warped, like it was melting on a vinyl record left too long in the sun. It came from across the hall, Diddy's cell. He was humming. No words, just the shape of the song. It looped, each round getting slower. The tune dragging behind the beat like a limp leg on stairs. I lay flat on my bunk, holding my breath like I was back on the street, hiding from a raid. Every muscle tight, eyes wide open even though they couldn't see a damned thing. And then I saw it. Light, faint and golden, like the kind you get from a birthday candle 2 seconds before it goes out. It came from under his door. Just a sliver, a flicker, but real. I crawled off the bunk, hands on the cold floor, nose to the door crack. There it was again, a moving glow, like a candle, swaying gently. No shadows dancing, just light. Not white like a flashlight, not blue like the emergency backups. This was fire. But we ain't allowed fire. Candles, lighters, matches. They're banned. Period. No exceptions. They strip cells every week looking for that kind of thing. There ain't a single place you could hide it without someone noticing. And yet, there it was. Flickering. The tune stopped. And for a moment I thought I could see something else in that light. A silhouette. Maybe his. Maybe not. But it was too tall for Diddy. Wrong shape. bent forward like it was listening, or speaking, or both. I couldn't move. And then, just as fast as it came, the light snapped out, and the humming stopped, and the silence snapped back like a stretched rubber band. I sat back hard against the wall. My heart was pounding. I could feel it behind my eyes. My mouth tasted like copper. My fingers were tingling. 3 minutes later, still in the dark, the hallway filled with a new smell. Burnt sage. Not the kind from commissary either. Not like food burned or a toasted bagel gone wrong. This was sharp, dry, sacred, like what you smell in church or when someone dies and the air needs cleansing. But it didn't feel clean. It felt heavy. When the lights came back, maybe 5, maybe 8 minutes later, I couldn't tell. Things weren't the same. No alarms went off. No announcements came through the speakers. Just a low whir as the vents restarted and the white fluorescence buzzed back into place. Diddy's cell looked wrong. His bunk was flipped. His toiletries were rearranged. His triangle of milk and Tylenol powder had been smudged and redrawn. But the biggest change was him. He was standing, arms at his sides, palms out like he'd just been searched. And his hand, black, covered in what looked like ash. It ran up his fingers, under his nails, into the lines of his knuckles, like he'd dipped them in soot. Or something worse. Later that morning, he got pulled for a shower. They do it twice a week in SHU. Cuff you up, march you one cell over to a stall with pressure so weak it barely peels soap off skin. As he walked by, eyes down like always, I saw it. A paper triangle, folded neat and tucked beneath his tongue. Only reason I saw it was because he coughed, a dry, barked sound that made him gag a little. His tongue pushed forward just long enough to reveal it. I'd seen that kind of fold before, not since I was a kid though. My abuela used to fold prayer requests like that and stuff them under candles during All Saints' Day. She said they had to be written in silence, said they were meant for ears that weren't human. When I was 6, she caught me trying to unfold one. She slapped my hand and told me, "Don't ever read what wasn't written for you." I never forgot that. Same kind of fold, same precision. That evening, after chow, I asked Herrera what happened during the blackout. Told him I smelled sage. Asked if someone lit a smoke, or if the warden authorized some kind of drill. He looked at me long. Then he said quiet and low, "We didn't bring sage, and no one had matches." He walked off before I could press. The paranoia started that night. I dreamed of the humming, clear this time, like it was right next to me, and the light, it returned, but this time it came from inside my head. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I was stuck, paralyzed, just that slow lullaby pulling me under like a tide I didn't ask to enter. I woke up covered in sweat, gripping the edge of my mattress. Swore I could still smell the ash. When I stood to stretch, something slid under my foot. A paper edge. I bent down. A triangle. Same fold, same size. No name. Just a message scrawled in the center in crooked, shaky ink. You heard it too. Ritual compliance. After the triangle showed up under my door, I stopped pretending I wasn't obsessed. I didn't talk to nobody. Didn't answer Herrera when he asked if I wanted a book drop. Didn't touch chow unless it came with powdered milk. All I did was watch Diddy. Track him. Try to find the edges of what he was doing, because I needed to believe there were edges, someplace where it ended, where it could be boxed up, explained, logged like a disciplinary write-up or a chemical imbalance. But the more I watched, the more it felt like everything else in the unit. Guards, inmates, meals, even the air itself was reacting to him. Like he wasn't adapting to SHU. SHU was adapting to him. It started with time. You think prison time is rigid. Wake up at 6 o'clock, chow by 7:30, wreck at 9 o'clock if you get it, count at noon and again at 4, lights dim at 10 o'clock but not out. Nothing really goes out in here. It's a rhythm, sterile and flat, and most of us get used to it, or lose our minds trying. But Diddy had a different rhythm. I tracked it. I started calling them the 4 segments. Segment 1. Stillness. He'd begin each day sitting cross-legged on his bunk, back perfectly straight, hands resting palms up on his knees. He didn't move, not to scratch, not to shift, just sat there, eyes open, locked on a spot across the cell wall like there was a slow-motion explosion only he could see. I tested it. I counted blinks. In one 4-hour stretch, he blinked 6 times. No stretching, no yawning, no bathroom break, just total stillness, the kind that makes you wonder if someone's still breathing. It made me anxious just watching. I'd pace, shift, tap my fingers just to prove I was still allowed to. But even then, I found myself mirroring his posture without realizing it. Knees folded, back straight, hands open. It felt right. Segment 2. Marking. After stillness, he'd begin the circle, always after 10:08 a.m. Not before, not after. 10:08 on the dot, like clockwork. He'd crush the pills, mix the powder, and reornament the ring on his floor. Clean, measured, exact. If even a speck went outside the ring, he'd redo the entire thing. Sometimes took him hours. Then the placements. Toothbrush at the head, soap at the foot, mirror shards smuggled somehow, tucked under his left heel, triangle of tissue to his right, and a name spoken aloud. Always a name. Most days it was nonsense syllables, but twice, I swear, he said mine. First time was soft, like a memory falling out of his mouth. Second time, he looked at my door when he said it. I wrote it down. Segment 3. Whispering. This was the part that turned my stomach. He'd sit inside the circle and face the corner of his cell. Then he'd start talking. Not whispering random thoughts, conversing, pausing like he was listening, sometimes nodding, sometimes shaking his head. I tried to catch the words through the vent, but most of it was in that same nonsense language, except for a few clear ones. Repeat. Not yet. Memory. Sometimes he'd smile when he said them. Other times, he'd bite his lip until it bled. One night, I heard him say, "No, he's not ready, but he's listening." And I knew he meant me. Segment 4. Silence. The final segment started every night at 3:33 a.m. I checked the clock on the wall, a broken relic stuck at 12:11, and timed it against the CO rounds. Same every time. At 3:33, he'd lie down flat on his back, hands at his sides, eyes wide open, mouth slightly parted like he was about to speak but didn't. He'd stay that way until 5 o'clock a.m. I stared through the food slot more than once, swore he wasn't blinking. Once, I thought he was dead, but then his lip twitched. Just once. The guards started calling it ritual compliance. I overheard one CO tell another, "Leave him be. Long as he stays in sequence, he's no problem." Sections. Like he was a machine following coded instructions. Like they expected this behavior and were relieved it wasn't worse. I asked Herrera why no one interfered. He looked pale, said, "Every time we try to break it, someone gets hurt. Last guy who snatched the mirror out his cell tripped on the tier steps next day, cracked his skull on the railing, and that was before Diddy started the full cycles." He shook his head and muttered, "It's easier to let it run its course." I couldn't take it. I had to track everything. I made a calendar on the inside of my mattress with a sharpened paperclip, marked his stillness hours, his redraws, his whispers. I started seeing correlations. Every third day, at exactly 3:33 a.m., he knocked 5 times on the cell wall. Always 5, always evenly spaced, then nothing for 2 days. Every 7th day, he folded something and swallowed it. Every 9th day, he recited what sounded like a list of names, including a few that weren't just nonsense syllables anymore. One of them was my mother's. That's when the migraines started. Not just headaches, pressure, like my brain was swelling. I'd get nosebleeds, vision shifts. One time, I looked at the back of my envelope journal and couldn't remember writing any of it. Whole pages in writing. That didn't look like mine. And yet, it was. I started losing time. I'd blink and hours would pass, wake up with my own triangle of folded tissue under my pillow. I tried talking to the others in the block. Most ignored me. But one guy, Dre, cell 417, he laughed, loud, said Diddy was just a punk trying to play wizard, 'cause he can't fight in here. He mocked the whispers. I heard him doing an imitation one night. Loud, stupid. The next morning, the screaming. Whole unit jolted awake. COs rushed in. Dre was choking, on what no one knew. He kept grabbing at his throat, coughing like he was trying to vomit up something that wasn't there. Took 3 guards to get the restraints on. They wheeled him out on a stretcher. He hasn't come back. That evening, Diddy sat in his circle, as always. But this time, I saw something new behind him. The name etched into the wall. Andre M. Same handwriting as the triangle. Same dark color I couldn't place. I stopped eating that night. I didn't need food. I needed to understand what came next. Chapter 5. I told them what I saw. They pulled me without warning. No paperwork, no explanation. One minute I was lying in my bunk, staring at the corner stain shaped like an eye. The next, I heard the flap slide open and Herrera's voice say, "Suit up. You got movement." I blinked, confused. Wreck? No. Nope. He didn't say where. That's how I knew it was serious. They shackled me like I was dangerous. Wrist, waist, ankles, not standard for SHU internal movement. And the guards flanking me weren't local boys. These ones wore black boots polished so clean you could see your reflection in them. Their gear was crisp. Standard issue, sure, but higher grade. The kind they give task forces. The kind with more clearance than names. We walked in silence, past the hall I'd never been down before, through a locked section I didn't know existed. We passed a door marked Interview Bay 3. The letters were etched clean, not stenciled like the usual signs. Someone had money for that sign. Inside, it was cold and quiet. No cameras in sight. 2 men were already seated when they brought me in. Both in suits, not federal blues. These were charcoal gray, tailor fit, pressed tight at the cuffs. Clean shaven, older, white, both of them. One had a clipboard, the other just sat with his hands folded in his lap. They didn't say hello, didn't give me names. Clipboard guy gestured for the guards to leave. When the door clicked behind me, he looked up for the first time and said, "You know why you're here?" I said nothing. The one with folded hands leaned in slightly. "We're not interested in rituals." I blinked. "We don't care about his prayer circles, or his whispering, or how many times he rearranges his soap. We care about what he's hiding." Clipboard guy took over. "Has Inmate Combs ever said a specific location? Even accidentally? Has he drawn anything resembling a map?" "A map?" I frowned. "What kind of map?" "Doesn't matter. Has he mentioned a place, a vault, a room, a compound, anything?" I shook my head. "Not to me. He don't talk." Clipboard man sighed. "Look, Karen." And when he said my name, I realized I hadn't given it to them. We believe Combs may be using these routines as misdirection. We believe he's trained himself to associate certain words, objects, or movements with information. Compartmentalized. The other man finally spoke. We think he's hiding physical evidence, drives, footage, contracts, names, things we don't have yet. We think he's coded it into his behavior. They both nodded at the same time, like a hive mind. Then Clipboard leaned forward, voice lower. We're prepared to offer sentence modification if your testimony proves useful. Minimum 5 years off, maybe more. I didn't answer right away. Something about the way they said testimony sat wrong, cold in my stomach. I'm not a rat, I said. Not defensive, just calm, flat. Folded hands guy said, this isn't about loyalty, this is about national security, this is about bodies. The silence after that line was thick. I shifted in my seat. I'll tell the truth, I said, finally, but I won't lie to make it easier to hear. They nodded again. It slipped. A clipboard guy pushed a sheet of paper across the table. Start here, write down everything. They left me alone in the room for 2 hours. I wrote, at first, just facts. Diddy's, cycles, the triangle patterns, the whisperers, the name on the wall after Dre was removed. But then I felt it start to unravel. As I tried to organize the days and events, things stopped lining up, like they'd overlapped, like pieces of different weeks had blended into each other. I couldn't remember what day it was when he first said my name. I couldn't remember if I saw the circle first or heard it described by someone else. My own handwriting started to stutter. Words repeated, diagonal slants in the lines. The name Combs began morphing into different shapes. Comb, combings, come. I caught myself writing come in 3 times down the margin, and I don't know why. I dropped the pen. That's when I realized I was shaking. I left the rest of the page blank. They didn't ask for more when they came back. Didn't thank me, didn't comment on the writing. They just slid the page into a manila folder, sealed it, and left me alone again. 5 minutes later, the guards came back and walked me the long way back to SHU. But when I stepped back into my cell, something was off. Smell hit me first. So, not like sweat, not like chow line grease or dried tear ducts. Like pure, gritty, ceremonial salt. My bed had a circle of it around the base, poured in a deliberate, almost perfect ring. My toothbrush and socks were in the exact same spots I'd left them, untouched, but the salt line hadn't been disturbed. That meant someone had put it there without touching anything else. Not an inmate, too clean. Not a guard, too quiet. Whoever did it wanted me to know they'd been here, but not leave a fingerprint, not a trace. I stood in the center of it for 10 minutes, heart thudding, staring at the circle. Then I sat, and I wrote everything again. This time, on the inside of my mattress. Not for them, for me, because I needed it somewhere they couldn't take. I wrote out Diddy's cycles, his phrases, my dreams, my blood pressure spikes, the things I saw in the tray reflections. The moment I heard a voice during the blackout, the paper triangle. The triangle in his mouth. And I ended the writing with just one question. What is he keeping back? That night, I didn't sleep. The light never fully went out. I stared at the cracks in the cinder block like they were maps, trying to read them for signs. I kept waiting for the triangle to show up again. It didn't. But when I stood up to brush my teeth in the morning, I noticed something new. Red thread, tied tight around the base of my toothbrush. A single loop. No knot, no fray, just there. Same as the one he wrapped around his before his ritual cycle started every day. And I knew, without a doubt, he knew I told Chapter 6, the man behind the circle. They brought me into the courtroom through a back corridor. No chain gang, no orange. I was in plain clothes. Gray shirt, khakis too long at the ankle, shoes that didn't fit right. Still had the smell of salt in my nose from that morning. I didn't sleep the night before. Couldn't. Not after the red thread. Not after that last cycle. The air in the courthouse felt different than shoe. Clean, sure, but not better. Like something was holding its breath. You know that tension before a storm cracks? It was like that, but stretched over everything. The wood panels, the polished railings, even the fake leather seat they sat me in while I waited to be called. A marshal walked over and said, "Courtroom 2B, no press, jury's already in, don't speak unless spoken to." I nodded, but my mouth was dry, felt like chalk in there. When I entered, I scanned the faces, 12 jurors, none of them looking directly at me. One had a pen trembling in her hand, another was blinking too much, like his eyes were trying to erase something they hadn't seen yet. Diddy was already seated. He didn't look at me. Sat with that same empty gaze, wearing a black suit that hung wrong on his frame. He looked smaller than I remembered, not just thinner, like the air had been siphoned out of him. But he wasn't weak. He was still, like the first time I saw him in Unit 4 North. The judge gave the formalities, reminded everyone this was a sealed session. No reporters, no transcripts available to the public, partial redaction in effect. They were protecting something. Or maybe someone. Then they called me. I walked up slow, tried not to look at him, but I felt his eyes on my back, not moving, just resting. I sat. They asked my name, my number, confirmed my incarceration history. Then they asked, "What did you observe in relation to inmate Combs?" My hands were already shaking. I started with the easy stuff. His silence, his routines, the circle, the triangle. Then I paused. I could hear my own breathing. The defense lawyer stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. We've already reviewed Mr. Brown's written statement. There's no need to dramatize the events verbally." The judge didn't even flinch. He's allowed to speak in his own words. "Continue, Mr. Brown." I looked down at the table in front of me. There were 2 deep scratches in the wood, parallel, carved with pressure. I took a breath and said, "He made a circle. Every day. Powdered milk, crushed Tylenol, 4-point placement system, soap, toothbrush, mirror, tissue, always in the same order. He sat inside it, never outside, like he was keeping something in." A murmur rippled through the jury box. I kept going. He whispered to the wall, paused between phrases like he was listening. Sometimes he laughed, sometimes he cried, sometimes he just nodded. "Can you explain the symbols?" the prosecutor asked. "No, sir. Only saw one clearly. Looked like a spiral, teeth, or hands, or both." "What about the triangles?" He folded them, tucked them under his tongue. I saw one in his mouth on the way to shower. Others showed up in other cells, mine too. The courtroom was quiet, unnaturally so. I licked my lips. He said my name, during marking phase, not loud, just once or twice, but I heard it. "Were you hallucinating, Mr. Brown?" "I don't think so." "You don't think so?" I felt something twist in my gut. I looked up. No, I wasn't, because after he said it, I started dreaming his dreams. Someone gasped. The judge glanced up sharply. I woke up humming what he hummed, rhythms I didn't know, patterns I'd never seen. I stopped remembering my own thoughts. My mother's name, my old block, it all went foggy. The defense jumped up again. "Your Honor, this is inflammatory, speculative." The judge held up a hand. "Let him finish." I clenched my hands. This ain't about speculation. This is about contamination. I didn't become his friend. I didn't choose to get close, but whatever he was doing in that cell, the rituals, the silence, the cycles, it didn't stay with him. I looked up. It got in the air. It got in me. My throat was closing. I felt heat behind my eyes. I tried to hold it in, but the tears came anyway. I cried. Not loud, not sobbing, just that kind of leak that don't stop once it starts. A slow, wet failure. My body didn't want to hold the weight of it anymore. I should have said something sooner, I whispered. Should have told the COs. Should have told somebody when I saw him writing Dre's name on the wall. But I didn't. I watched. I kept watching. I wrote it down. I copied it. Why? The prosecutor asked, voice lower now. Because I thought if I understood it, I could stop it. But I wasn't stopping anything. I paused. Whatever Diddy was doing in that cell, it wasn't for us. It was to hold something back. The room fell silent. Not a shuffle, not a cough, not even the sound of breathing. The judge was staring at me. The jury looked paralyzed. The defense attorney sat down slowly, as if unsure of their own spine. I didn't look at Diddy. I couldn't. A marshal came to escort me out. I stood, legs shaky, took one last look at the room. Felt like it would collapse in on itself if someone exhaled too hard. They walked me out the side door, but the hallway outside passed right by a shoe-secure corridor. And as we turned the corner, I saw him. He was behind the reinforced glass, arms folded behind his back, face calm. And he was smiling, not smug, not mocking, a gentle, knowing smile. And he mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I knew what he said. It was my name, Chapter 7, the Empty Bunk. They moved me the morning after my testimony. Didn't say where. Just packed up what little I had. A Bible with no cover, 3 envelopes, my commissary-issued toothbrush, and walked me down 2 flights, past a checkpoint I'd never been through before. Unit 3 East. Lower security wing, smaller cells, no direct line of sight to shoe. Congratulations, one of the COs muttered as he unlocked the new cell. You're not haunted anymore. But I knew that was a lie before I even stepped inside. The new bunk smelled like bleach, overused like someone was trying to kill a memory, not a germ. Walls had fresh white patches where something had been scrubbed and painted over in a hurry. The floor shined unevenly, like a ritual had been erased, but not fully. They didn't put anyone else in with me, said it was for my safety. But I think they were scared I'd infect somebody. Or worse, that I'd bring something with me. Diddy was gone too, not to general population, not to protective custody, just gone. Rumor was he got moved to a federal black site, some kind of deep classification hold. No one spoke about it openly. The COs had tightened up, fewer laughs, shorter conversations. Herrera was reassigned. One guard, Petrov, I never saw again. Someone said he took indefinite leave after spending one night posted outside Diddy's door. They say he started humming to himself and wouldn't stop. No one had taken Diddy's old bunk since. The cell was still listed as offline in the intake ledger. Even the cleaners refused to enter it. That's when I started noticing things in my new space. I'd line up my books, then shift them again, even spacing, spine out, alphabetical, but then I'd switch them by page count, then by color. The next morning, I caught myself folding my shirt into a triangle. I don't know why, it just felt right. Like a muscle twitch you didn't notice until it was halfway done. Every time I brushed my teeth, I'd loop the thread from my commissary packet, the one that seals the sugar bags, around the handle. Always one loop, always counterclockwise. I stopped looking people in the eye, started counting steps from bed to toilet, bed to door, door to wall. 11, then 13, then back to 11. I tried to sleep. Really tried. But dreams turned to loops. I'd dream of the courtroom. Then the hallway. Then his face. Then my name. Then my name in his voice. I started keeping a journal again. But this time, the writing wasn't mine. I'd wake up and find full pages filled in, no memory of holding a pen, slanted script, sharp corners, like someone was using my hand for practice. The words didn't make sense. Return sequence. Triangle complete. You are memory now. I ripped the pages out and flushed them, but every time I did, more appeared the next morning, like the notebook wanted to be full. And then the envelope came. No stamp, no sender, just slid under the door during rec hour. I opened it slow. Inside, a folded triangle, neatly creased, perfect symmetry, written on one side in that same unfamiliar handwriting. You kept the pattern, that's all we needed. My stomach dropped. Hadn't told anyone about the triangle folding, not in the testimony, not in the intake interviews, not even in the note I burned under my bunk. I sat on the floor and stared at it for an hour. And that's when it hit me. Diddy didn't make the rituals for himself. He gave them away. He passed them on. Like a virus, like a rhythm passed hand to hand. All of us in shoe were just tuning forks. He tapped the first one, and the rest kept ringing, some louder than others. And me? I kept ringing the loudest. I started hearing my name whispered when no one was there. Not loud, just a breath, like air moving past a mouth that didn't exist. The corners of mirrors distorted when I passed. Reflections didn't sync, they lagged. Once I caught my face still looking at me after I'd turned away. At chow, the inmate across from me dropped his spoon and whispered, "You're the new one, huh?" Then he blinked, like he didn't remember saying anything. It was getting worse. I stopped trusting time. I'd black out for seconds, then minutes. Once I lost an hour and found myself kneeling on my mattress, hands out, just like he used to sit. Didn't remember getting there. And then, last night, I peeled back the mattress corner, searching for the source of a faint smell. Something stale, sour, familiar. And that's when I found it, tucked deep in the corner crease. Old, cracked, yellowed with age. A paper triangle, same fold, same shape, but with something written on the bottom in faded ink. Cycle 3. Transfer candidate. Brown. K. Opace letter, one author at a letter. Progress, letters. Publisher. Issued 5. Used, blog. Ad, assistant, candidate, Brown. K, issued 5. Issues plus bog, plus please. I froze. 5 years. 5 years before Diddy was ever locked up, before I ever stepped foot in MDC Brooklyn, before I even knew his name. My hands went cold, my tongue felt dry. I held the triangle like it might burn a hole in me. And that's when I understood. I didn't inherit the ritual. I was prepared for it. Chapter 8. They only stay when you listen. 3 months passed. I wasn't in SHU anymore. I wasn't even in MTC Brooklyn. They moved me out of state. Some medium security joint in upstate New York where the trees outnumbered the guards and the walls were thick but not as loud. Different beds, different meals, different faces. You'd think that'd be enough to scrub the inside of a man, but the pattern never left. I still counted steps, to which he still kept a toothbrush wrapped in red thread. He folded every napkin into triangles before throwing it away, even though I didn't know why. The dreams changed too, less violent, but more specific. Not screaming, but instructions. Not blood, but symbols. I started seeing sequences I couldn't explain. Math I never learned. Locations I didn't recognize. They came like ticker tape across the back of my eyelids. The tune he used to hum still lived in my throat, but I stopped letting it out. I mouthed it silently now, like prayer. And then the letter came. No stamp, no return, just a single sheet slid under my bunk before lights out. Post-verdict addendum, hearing, confidential, transport at 700. No explanation, no choice. Next morning, they shackled me like old times. I watched the snow blur past through the transport van window. Something about it felt like an ending, or a loop closing. The court was the same room, same judge, same energy, but colder, dimmer. Half the lights off, as if power wasn't the priority anymore. No jury this time, no press, just the judge. 2 new federal agents, 1 court recorder who never looked up from her keyboard. I sat where I had before. The prosecutor cleared his throat. Inmate Combs has refused further cooperation. No statements, no acknowledgement of the verdict. But we received one last item in evidence. He placed a USB drive on the table in front of me. It was red, matte plastic, label handwritten in all caps. Calmed. Record 7C. Play it, the judge said. A screen lowered from the wall. Grainy footage started. Black and white, slight static, no timestamp. It was him. Me. Sitting cross-legged in the circle. Palms open, lips moving, eyes closed. Same powdered line on the floor. Same object arrangement. Toothbrush, soap, tissue, mirror. The audio was faint, just enough to pick up breaths. He was whispering again. Too soft to decode. His mouth shaped the same phrases over and over. Then without warning he stopped. His eyes opened. He stared at the wall for a moment, then turned his head slowly to look directly into the camera. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. 11 seconds passed. I counted them in my bones, and then he mouthed something. You heard it too. Static surged, the screen went black. No one spoke for a full minute. The judge finally broke the silence. Mr. Brown, do you have anything to add for the record? I looked down at the table. There was a notebook in front of me. Blank, fresh pages, pen uncapped. I didn't remember anyone placing it there. I picked it up slowly, brought the pen to the page, started to write, but it didn't come out right. Not even my number. Just 4 letters. Son. I froze. My hands started shaking. I flipped to the next page, tried again. Yes, son comes. I dropped the pen. The court recorder finally looked up. Her eyes were wide. I stood slowly, walked backward, not looking at anyone. The air was heavy in that room, thick with something that had followed me, not from MDC, but from wherever he had reached when he made that first circle. They asked me one more time at the door, as the guard took me by the arm. Do you believe he was trying to send a message? I didn't answer, because the answer was too big, too layered. They just whispered. I testified about Diddy's rituals, but I think the ritual was me.